Hello and welcome to today's webinar, How to Improve Your Influencer Relations, Ethics Disclosure and Brand Reputation. My name is Jake O'Neill. I'm the Marketing Manager here at Vuelio. We're delighted to have all of you on the line with us today for this very special webinar. Before we start, you can join the conversation. Use the hashtag Vuelio, at us on Twitter, find us on Facebook, and try and find us on Google+, because I do believe we are there. I'm delighted to say we're joined today by two very special guests, Anne-Marie Lacey and Deb Sharratt, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves and take it away. Guys.
Hello everyone, hi, it's Anne-Marie speaking here. So yeah, just very quickly before we dive into everything, I thought we'd take a really quick second just to introduce myself, and so Deb can say a few words too, just so you know who we are and hopefully why we're relevant to be talking about what we're going to talk about today. So I'm Managing Director of an agency called Filament PR. We specialise in lifestyle, leisure and entertainment. I'm also an academic tutor at the University of Sunderland in Newcastle. I'm actually holed up in a room at Newcastle now because I'm about to teach a class in an hour's time. I'm Chair of CIPR North East, a Chartered PR practitioner, and I'm also, not so much longer because the award season is coming around again, but I'm the current winner of Outstanding Communicator at the National Excellence Awards. Deb, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Deb. I am an independent PR and marketing professional. I've been working in PR for around about 20 years and currently also a blogger. So I do PR work and I also blog as well. I'm also a tutor at University of Sunderland and Newcastle University, and I teach CIPR qualifications through a training organisation called NESMA. I'm an accredited PR practitioner and I'm alongside Anne-Marie. I'm the Vice Chair of CIPR North East.
Cool. So enough of the introductions. I'm sure you don't want to hear us prattle on too much about ourselves. So what we're going to talk about in the next 20 minutes or so is how to use the ASA guidelines, CAP code, Google rules and other social media secrets when it comes to influencer relations. And I think the key word here is ethical influencer relations, and we'll come on to that in just a moment. But a little bit about why Deb and I are kind of qualified to talk to you about this today. So this is a bit of a world exclusive. So I obviously run Filament PR. Deb runs Deb Sharratt Communications, working as a freelance PR practitioner. We've worked together for, I couldn't even tell you how many years now. Deb, probably nearing 10-ish years now, is it?
Probably, yeah.
Around that, both in our CIPR capacity. Deb is an associate of Filament PR and also works with other PR agencies as well. But I also do a lot of work with Deb on my clients at Filament PR in a PR and influencer relationship. So we've done this for quite a number of years now, to be honest with you, and we've both seen it done really well, and we've both seen some, to be honest, horror stories too. So hopefully today we're going to give you a little bit of insight into how to do it right, why it's important, and some other useful takeaways for when you're planning and implementing your influencer relations campaigns too. So why is getting influencer relations right? Why does it matter? Well, from a PR perspective, obviously our job is all about protecting and enhancing the reputation of the brands that we represent. So if you were to be caught up in unethical influencer relations, it's really a question of how does that then impact back on the brand that you're representing? Do you really want to mislead your audience? Do you want to tarnish that brand reputation that you've worked so hard to build up? So it's about trust and integrity and authenticity as well, and we'll come on to that a little bit later on about why it's important to make sure that you're working with the right influencers for influencer campaigns to be authentic. And then, of course, it's about brand value and brand reputation and how, if you don't get this right, how that can then be negatively impacted. So just an example of this is a client that I'm working on at the moment with Filament PR. It's Durham Business Improvement District. And as you can probably guess by what you can see on the screen right now, it's around a hot air balloon festival called Balloons in Durham. Big giveaway there in the name and the pictures. So they're a client of mine at Filament PR. It's an integrated PR and marketing comms campaign. And I'm working with Debbie in her role as a blogger at my boys club to be the official blogger for the event. And on the next slide we have for you, you can see some coverage that we've achieved through working with Debbie. And I think the key thing to point out here is where it says balloons in Durham, everything you need to know for 2018, there's that little clue after that says add, that lets people know that this is clearly part of an influence relations campaign, that Debbie has been asked to do this, and that there's been some kind of value exchange in return for it. So we're now going to come on to how you go about doing this to achieve this type of coverage.
If I just add into that as well, it's obviously very key on my blog that actually this is something that I wrote about last year just as a person who was going to go along to it. So actually, for my readers seeing it, I wanted to be very clear that they knew that I was actually being paid to write this, but that actually shouldn't have no effect on what they think about it. And it's very clearly also tells you who is actually paying for it. So it's just about being clear and upfront and telling people everything that they need to know.
Yeah, sure. And we'll come on to that later on, the difference between a blogger going along to an event or talking about a product because they've stumbled across it themselves and they quite like it, versus a blogger being asked to do that by a PR. So, Deb, do you want to pick up on the ASA? So we're going to get into the kind of the nitty-gritty and the rules that you need to be aware of now.
Yeah, some of the rules and regulations, they aren't that, sometimes they're not that clear, and it's only by kind of trying to find them out, discovering them, working on both the PR side and also the blogging side, that you actually realize that there are regulations there that you should be following, and actually they can be clear as long as you actually sort out what they are. There is a call out at the moment by the Advertising Standards Agency to actually look at how do we actually label what is paid for content, and does the end user and the consumer and our audience actually understand what we mean by it. And I think it's a really important conversation to have. So this conversation is currently going on, but what we're going to actually talk about is actually just what we should be doing at the moment as well, to actually see how this works. So at the moment, as we've just shown on my blog, where there has been any exchange in value, and that's where it can be money, or it could also be an experience, it can be a product that's being given. If there's been any exchange in value and some element of editorial control, then that information, that blog post, that vlog should be marked clearly as an advert. That should have the ad in the title of the post. There should be a line at the top of the post declaring that it was produced in association with a brand, and also clear identification of any affiliate links as well. It's not just about having a small disclosure at the end of a post. It's about just being clear, honest, and upfront with the reader before they actually get into the detail of what you're talking about.
I think similarly, Debbie. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I think that's really key that this stuff is disclosed up front and that it's not buried away at the bottom of the post, because someone could read a full post or look at something on a social media platform and think, oh yeah, that looks great. And only when they get to the end realize that essentially what they're reading is paid for content.
Or they may really never get to the end.
Exactly. So it's really important that this is front and center at the beginning.
It is. I'm always really clear. I'm always very clear on my blog that actually I wouldn't put anything on it that I wouldn't want someone to read, and I wouldn't accept paid posts from anything that I was trying to hide or not disclose. So actually, I don't have a problem with having ad at the top of my pages and being very clear about it. And I've just noticed that there's a problem saying, is there a negative effect? I've not actually found it. I think maybe it depends on what you're blogging about and what the content is, but I've only had positive feedback from actually disclosing the relationship between myself and the brand that I'm working with.
And likewise, when I've been reaching out to bloggers and I've been specifying what it is that I want, and again, we'll come on to this in a few slides' time, but so many bloggers respond back and say it's so refreshing to have a PR clearly say what they want and how the content should be laid out, so that it's in everyone's best interest to be totally transparent on the nature of the relationship.
The CAP code as well, which is also part of the ASA guidelines, is also that we shouldn't pretend to be somebody else when there's a commercial intent involved. So actually pretending to be a consumer when we're actually being paid to do some kind of activity as a marketing person actually then also breaks the rules. So it's again, the rules are very clear again that if there's an exchange of money and you're marketing something, that you should tell people that there is some kind of reward and exchange back as part of that. And I don't think that is that complicated. I think there are some grey areas which we'll come into, but actually I actually do think it's quite a clear message, and one that's actually quite clear for consumers to understand as well. There are issues of follow links within websites, and these are where a follow link is very beneficial in terms of search engine optimization, but you can also get a no follow link which will take a person to the same web page, but it won't give the important SEO benefit to the brand and themselves. So Google considers a paid link to be, so if you're receiving money, you shouldn't be putting a follow link for a brand. So it's all about not being able to buy your way up the Google ranking. So you shouldn't be appearing on the first page of Google searches or at the top by buying your way there. You should be earning it by merit by having decent content. I often, though, get requests by brands to actually, can people buy links on my website? Can I do a sponsored promotion, but can I use a follow link with it? I'm always very clear that I don't accept them, but people do accept them. However, it also goes against the CIPR guidelines and code of conduct that I've signed up to actually accept them, to either buy or sell them as a PR or as a blogger. So I'm very clear that I don't. The rules are that you shouldn't have follow links, and the reason being that we've just gone through is that obviously you shouldn't be able to buy your way up, and you shouldn't be able to increase authority of your website by buying links from someone who's got a higher authority site than you. So therefore, any paid for content should be a no follow link. If you understand coding, there is some coding that you can actually put within a website that creates a no follow link. However, most blogging platforms, and I use Blogger, it's an easy tick box process, so it's actually really, really simple. I get 3 or 4 requests a week, sometimes more, of people trying to buy links on my site. So I know it happens quite a lot out there. There's people trying to actually do this all the time. It's beneficial for SEO, but it actually goes against all the guidelines of what we should actually be doing.
Sorry, Deb, with that, with the follow no follow, is it just the blogger that gets punished by Google for having the paid for follow link, or would the brand site also get paid for punished if Google found out?
It is both, because you're not allowed to buy or sell a paid for follow link according to Google's regulations. So therefore, if you're the brand, you're buying the link, and if you're the blogger, you're selling the link. So actually both contravene the Google's regulations. So in fact, then both the brand and the blogger are contravening the CIPR code of conduct as well, which is all about best practice.
Yes. So it's not worth it in any respect, even if you're unethical. It wouldn't be worth it anyway because you're going to get punished.
No, so I mean, obviously it hasn't happened to me, so I don't know what the effect is. But if the long-term gain or the long-term aim of having lots of organic traffic coming from a website through Google searches and other search engines, then I wouldn't want to jeopardize that. And also because it's actually just unethical as well. So I'd rather have what comes up at the top of a Google search, something that's earned itself to be there, not because someone's just had a lot of money to buy some links across the web. So,
and I think from a PR perspective as well, it's about brand placement. Do you really want the brand that you're working with to be featured on a blog against a load of low quality paid for links that isn't going to, by association, reflect well on the brand that you're representing?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
We're going to go quickly over Anne-Marie briefly talked about it earlier, so it's not just actually my blog that I disclose in terms of where payment has been made, but when I link to those pages from social media platforms, I think it's also the ASA guidelines are actually that you should also be disclosing on there before somebody comes to your website or your YouTube channel about what actually it is. So if it has been paid for content, you're also disclosing on social media that it is an ad. Social media platforms also have their own rules, which we should all be abiding by too. So Facebook has a branded content tool, which they declare is for an exchange of value and not just for cash. Instagram is introducing its own branded content tool like Facebook. This isn't available to everybody at the moment. It's not something I have yet, so I still have to use ad on any paid-for content that I have on Instagram, but I don't have the tool to actually use. When I have the tool, it'll be a lot clearer. Pinterest and on Twitter, we should be using ad if it's paid content, and on YouTube, it should be a warning. Disclosure should happen before anybody actually plays the link or at the beginning of any videos that are on there. By using ad in the title of my blog post, it means it automatically is then disclosed as ad on any channels that it actually pulls it through to. So it's actually by putting the ad in the title actually is a really, and in the meta description is a really easy way of making sure that it's always then disclosed wherever you are. So there are easy ways of actually making sure that you never forget that something was a paid-for item either.
I know we speak to a number of bloggers about this, and I think particularly Instagram, there's concerns that hashtag ad is perhaps facing the shadow ban, or your posts are not going to do as well, perhaps with engagement levels as they could have done because you're using hashtag ad repeatedly. Is there an alternative you can use, or must it be hashtag ad?
I think at the moment this is quite, it's a difficult area. I think ad is clearest to the end user, and I think we always need to think of the audience and what they understand by what we're putting. So I've seen people use sponsored, gifted, review. Again, it's what does that mean to somebody? There isn't a clear descriptor for each channel that's consistent.
Yeah.
A bit of consistency would be really great. Hopefully the call out at the minute by the ASA will actually come up with some guidelines that will then be rolled out across the board. Even on Facebook, when a post is labelled as paid, it means it's been sponsored by a brand. However, when it says sponsored, it actually means it's an advert. So again, there's still confusion, even trying
very
to be
grey areas, isn't
confusion. So I would hope that at some point it would become a lot clearer for everybody, and that includes not just the brands and the bloggers, but also the end user. So they just know what they're seeing all the time, and that's what kind of aim for. But yes, there is. I've heard people talk about that if you use ad, that your post doesn't get seen. I have no evidence to back this up one way or the other, but if you're not disclosing, then you're breaking the guidelines anyway. So yeah, it is a difficult one.
Excellent. So we'll move on to the next slide then. So hopefully that's given you an overview of the many different rules and regulations for different channels and platforms that you need to be aware of. So with those in mind, it then comes down to how do you actually do influencer relations? What does it look like in action? And this may seem like common sense things to say, but both in my experience and Deb's experience, so many PRs out there get this horribly, horribly wrong. So if you're doing this right, great, but hopefully there'll be some little pearl of wisdom in there for you. So the first step, obviously, is find the right blogger. I think especially with the whole GDPR guidelines coming into force next week it is, this whole scattergun approach of pinging a pitch out to anyone and everyone, it doesn't reflect well on the brand, it doesn't reflect well on you as a professional. So it's really key to find the right blogger or influencer. There are, of course, a number of ways you can do that, one being through Vuelio's platform. I use that myself. But the other is taking to social media, looking for relevant hashtags around the brand that you're representing to see who's talking about it. And from there, it's not a case of, right, job done, that's who I'm going to pitch. You really do need to do your homework. So take a look at their website, take a look at the types of content they're producing. Really think about, are they the right fit for the brand that you're representing, and is that a platform that you would want your brand to be associated with? The other thing to have a look at and think about is ask for media packs. Lots of influencers do have their own media packs now. In my experience, the ones that don't have it, if you just ask for some stats, they're more than happy to share it with you. So get that information and then really interrogate it. That does come with a little bit of a health warning, though, in that don't be dazzled by big follower numbers. At the end of the day, you've got to ask yourself, does size matter? Do you want to have your brand aligned with someone who has thousands and thousands of Instagram followers, but actually isn't all that engaged, doesn't have the right reach, doesn't start conversations or have a community around them? So bear those in mind when you are looking for the right influencers to reach out to. Then the next step is to really think about your approach. And the key thing to remember here is that it's a really competitive market out there for influencers now. You know, a lot of people have seen how well some people are doing and are making a living out of it. So there's people who do this as part of their full-time job, and there's others who do it as a bit of a little money earner on the sideline. But it is a competitive market. So again, the scattergun approach of offering 10, 15, 20 bloggers or vloggers the exact same product to review isn't going to fly very well. So think about what you can offer them that is different for them, and try and think beyond just the here and now and think about, you know, longevity, a long-term relationship. Are there opportunities for follow-ups? Can they support in other campaigns that you might be working or planning on? And include this in your approach to them. When you do reach out to them, you need to clearly, especially with GDPR in mind as well, clearly outline your business interests. So why it is that you're contacting them, what it is you're hoping to achieve, and what it is that you're asking from them. And then throughout the course, hopefully it's all agreed and you set up on the right path. Remember to keep in touch. It's not just a case of saying, yep, okay, you do this and I'll do that. Check in regularly and think about measurement and evaluation as well, and how this influencer's work might help to positively impact your campaign objectives. So one thing that Debbie and I do, we work together in a lot of different guises, so I don't think today goes past that we don't speak about something, but when we're working together in a PR influencer capacity, we regularly check in with each other. What are the deadlines? Are they being met? How's things going? What's engagement like? How's hits back to the traffic performing, for example? And so sorry, Debbie.
Sorry, I'm just jumping in.
No,
to add to that, actually, keeping in touch with a blogger, looking at it from the blogger's point of view. I worked on a campaign recently, and it wasn't with Anne-Marie. It was for a cultural event, and it was happening in 3 to 4 weeks' time after we started. But during the whole 4 weeks of the time between the blog post going out and the event happening, the PR person kept in touch, updated on in terms of how ticket sales were going, were there different types of people we were trying to target. So any new information coming through, I was actually able to update my blog post about, so it wasn't just there for one day and left. We were able to keep promoting it during the whole duration of the time, and it made it a much more valuable piece of communication for the event itself. So it wasn't out of date the day after I've written it. I was quite happy to go back and update it because I didn't want people reading out of date information on my blog either, so it worked for both of us. So it's well worth doing.
Which is just as well, Debbie, because after this I do need to send you an email with some more information about balloons and Durham. So there we go. Perfect. So in terms of what you should be asking for in your role as a PR professional when working with influencers, the first thing is spell it out in black and white. You should have a really clear contract. That doesn't have to be a legally binding document, prepared by a solicitor or something like that, but just your terms of business on an email in writing that clearly outlines who you are, why you're doing this, why you're reaching out to them, what you would like from them, what deadlines are, so that everyone has a reference point to go back to. You need to really clearly set your expectations. So what outputs do you want from the influencers? So not just saying, can you review this for me? Do you want a blog post? Do you want a YouTube haul? Do you want a series of posts on Instagram? Do you want to be featured in their Instagram stories? Really drill down into the detail of what it is that you need. And then provide as much information and as a detailed brief as possible. So outcomes, what does success look like? So when I start working with Debbie, I always say, so this is the campaign, this is what we're trying to achieve, and this is where I see you fitting in and helping out with this. Is this something you can do? Going back to the earlier point about posts being disclosed as an ad and this question of editorial control. So according to the ASA, even just asking for a post is editorial control. So if you're including specific links that need to be included in a post, Obviously, remember, there need to be no follow, any kind of hashtags, anything like that. That is editorial control, and you need to put that to the influencer to let them know that this is what you would like including. Other thing that's always really useful to include is key messages. What it is you want to get across, can they perhaps try and weave that into their content that they create for you, as well as images, photography, logos, any of the kind of content that might help to illustrate their piece. The one thing that I would advise, I'm sure Debbie would agree, is don't just send a press release out like you might do to a journalist. It doesn't work. It's not relevant for an influencer. By all means, send it as reference and context and background information, but you really do need to be tailoring your pictures to each individual influencer that you reach out to.
Definitely.
So, when things go wrong, because we all know it can happen, hopefully you'll find that this all works really well for you. You end up with a great piece or series of pieces of content from a blogger or a vlogger or some kind of social media content creator that clearly follows the rules, that is exactly as you've set out in your terms of business. But sometimes it does go awry. It happened to me earlier this week, and I had to go back to a blogger and say, I'm sorry, but you've included a follow link, and we specifically said no follow link. Or there was another blogger I was working with who had said, you know, your disclaimer's at the very bottom of the post. Can you please move it to the top and put ad in the title? And that's the whole purpose, really, of having that clear contract so that you have it in black and white to refer back to if what the output is delivered isn't what you were expecting or you believed you've asked for.
I think can I just jump in? I think that's a really interesting point. And we had a question that's come in that said, who is responsible for following the rules?
I was just coming on to that one. So the short answer is everyone. You know, the bloggers should be following the rules because it is their owned platform. But equally, it's not enough for PR to say, but they haven't done it, my job's done. It is your responsibility as a PR professional to check the output that the blogger, the influencer creates for you and cross-reference that back against what you've specifically asked for and what you've agreed, that you can then go back to them and say, look, this isn't what I was expecting or this isn't what we discussed.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, you as the PR person, it is your job to enhance brand reputation. So if you can see that a blogger or influencer hasn't done what you've asked of them and that what they have done could potentially tarnish your brand reputational value, it is your job to protect that. So it is therefore your job to go back and say, what we expected, and could you please amend it?
Yeah. Cool.
Now, what paid for content really means and when you need to disclose. So, Debbie, do you want to pass through the PESO model very quickly and kind of sum up?
Yeah, so the PESO model is in public relations, which is paid, earned, social, and owned media. Traditional media relations often falls into earned media entirely and doesn't really come across any of the other areas. The old advertorials, as they were kind of more paid for editorial content, but traditional media relations that we've all done for many years is kind of earned media relations. Now, working with influencers, bloggers, content creators, kind of falls between two different areas. It can still be completely earned relations. It can be earned media. It's not all influencers accept payment, not all influencers accept payment in kind. Some people's blogs are literally just what they want to talk about, and you can still influence what they want to know about. But as soon as you're talking about money or product or gifting experiences, then you're actually getting into the paid media area. So any exchange of value, editorial control, when you're asking people to write a review, including campaign hashtags, links, this is all demonstrating editorial control, and therefore you're actually paying them with either money or gifts in kind, and therefore you're actually then within the paid for remit, and then you need to disclose as advertising.
I think a really good way to kind of sense check for yourself as to whether or not this is paid or not is, like Debbie said, there can be some grey areas around, gifts in kind, experiences, things like that. So I think to myself, if this was being offered to Joe Bloggs, member of the public, would they have to pay for it? And am I therefore offering it to the influencer for free? And if that's the case, then it is paid for.
Excellent. So just to kind of wrap up on this whole reviews point, we know that it's a bit of a big grey area. Like Debbie said, some influencers will cover things because it's of interest to them. So like she said at the top of this webinar, she covered the Balloons in Durham event last year as a member of the public who was just interested in it. She wasn't asked to write about it. There wasn't any kind of exchange of service or experience or value for it. So that was very much earned. She did it of her own accord. I had absolutely no editorial control over the content of the posts and the social media posts either. However, this year it's different. She's being asked to be the official blogger. She's going up in a hot air balloon, weather dependent. So if you can keep your fingers crossed for nice fine days, that would be brilliant, everybody. So that there is very clearly there an exchange of value of some sort. Therefore, it does definitely fit in the paid area of the pay-so model, and therefore all of that content does need to be disclosed as such as we've gone over in this session. There is a question and query in terms of reviews about the difference between media and bloggers, because obviously as PRs we send product out and invite press on media trips and so forth. And we might do the same with bloggers. However, with the media, that still sits very much in the editorial section of the pay-so model, where it is different for influencers. And the thing you need to think of there is that media journalists are often working for an organisation, for a newspaper, a magazine, TV station, radio, whatever it might be, whereas influencers tend to be working for themselves. Of course, you've got independent journalists, but they're normally commissioned by an organisation. And the other thing to remember as well is this element of editorial control. So, I can go to Debbie and I can say, Debbie, can you come along to this event? And I'd like a post, some Facebook content, a YouTube video of you in the hot air balloon, and I'd like X, Y, and Z. This is the link. It's no follow, but it leads back to the website. These are some images from last year's event, and all of that stuff's included. Now, if I invited the local press, so the Northern Echo is Durham's local newspaper, along, and I sent the same kind of content and asked the same types of things from them, they'd probably laugh at me and say, "You're trying to tell us how to do our job." So the element of editorial control is very different between media and bloggers. And Debbie, you mentioned it the other day when we were chatting. You said when you work with influencers, you expect coverage and content to appear, whereas when you're working with the media, you kind of hope that content and coverage appears as well. So sorry, Debbie, go on.
I was going to say, going back to the point of having a professional approach to your influencer relations by setting that contract in place, even if it is your contract is an exchange of email because it's still written down in an agreed activity, that is the difference. So that wouldn't be the same with a journalist and in terms of the media, but it actually is in terms of what we're actually doing with bloggers. So if you've got a contract in place, then it is 99% out. Over time, it will then be paid for content in some shape or form.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you both so much. It's quite a lot of information in such a short space of time. We did manage to get through a number of questions, but I know there's some that haven't been answered. Unfortunately, we've actually run out of time. So what we'll do is follow this post up. This webinar up with a blog post where we go through the questions, and hopefully our two lovely presenters will be able to answer them on that. Anne-Marie and Deb, thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining
Sorry
us.
if we talk too quickly. Someone comment.
It's the northern accent, isn't it? Sorry, guys.
I think it was wonderful. So thank you both very much, and thank you everyone else for joining us.
Thank you. And if anyone's got any direct questions, feel free to drop us a line. You can see our contact details on the screen there, and we'll be happy to help out where we can.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Great. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Bye.